Fame is often seen as the ultimate shield. Surrounded by luxury, protected by wealth, and adored by millions, celebrities seem almost untouchable, invincible even. But beyond the spotlight, behind the velvet curtains and camera flashes, there lies a darker truth that even fame cannot erase: fear. While the world fixates on their glamorous lifestyles, few ever hear about the nights these stars wake up in a cold sweat or the unexplainable things they've seen when no one was watching. Tonight, you'll hear 3 such stories, tales whispered in private circles, suppressed by publicists, and dismissed by skeptics. Stories that the world wasn't meant to know. Stories that blur the line between fame and the paranormal. You may be thinking, why would a celebrity lie? After all, they have everything. But what if that's exactly why they're targeted? Empty hotel rooms, deserted film sets, lonely late-night studios, these are the places where fame fades and silence creeps in. And in that silence, something else watches. Something old. Something patient. In this 1-hour journey, we peel back the curtain and reveal encounters so chilling, even seasoned paranormal investigators were left shaken. These aren't just ghost stories, they're confessions. Personal accounts from 3 world-renowned celebrities, each trapped in a haunting experience that forever altered the way they see the world. Our stories are told through their voices and those who were there with them: assistants, security guards, makeup artists, and even studio crew members. You'll hear the tale of a rock star who checked into a hotel room that nearly broke him. An actress who met a ghost far scarier than the character she was portraying. And a talk show host who realized too late that he was never truly alone on his set. For years, these stories were buried, locked behind legal agreements, and silenced by PR nightmares. But now, through whispers, leaked footage, and those brave enough to speak anonymously, the truth has begun to surface. So turn down the lights, put on your headphones, and listen closely. Because whether you're a fan or a skeptic, one thing is certain: the paranormal doesn't care how famous you are. And tonight, it's coming out of the shadows, just beyond the spotlight. Are you ready? It was supposed to be just another stop on the tour. The city was small, the concert was sold out, and the hotel, a grand, historic building nestled downtown, was known for its 5-star service and old-world charm. The rock star, whom we'll call Dylan Cross for privacy, had stayed in hundreds of hotels across the globe. But this one would follow him for the rest of his life. After a high-energy performance, Dylan was escorted by his team to the hotel's top floor. He was given room 907, a lavish suite that overlooked the city skyline. The concierge told him the room was a favorite among VIP guests, with a grand chandelier, antique furniture, and windows draped in thick velvet curtains. But as soon as Dylan walked inside, he felt that heaviness in the air. At first, he chalked it up to exhaustion and adrenaline. He took a hot shower, ordered room service, and tried to relax. But something wasn't right. That night, he couldn't sleep. Around 2:13 a.m., he was awoken by 3 distinct knocks, tap, 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 coming from the inside of his closet. Thinking it was room service or a member of his team, he got up and opened the door. Nothing. The closet was empty. No sound, no draft. Just a chill that made the hair on his arms stand up. He returned to bed, trying to shake it off. But the knocking came again. And this time, it wasn't from the closet. It was from the bathroom. Dylan grabbed his phone and began recording, partly out of fear, partly in disbelief. As he crept toward the bathroom, he noticed the mirror was fogged up as if someone had just taken a hot shower. But he hadn't used it in hours. On the glass, as clear as daylight, were words written in the fog: "I never left." His heart pounded. He checked the room keycard panel. No other entries had been made since his check-in. He called the front desk in a panic, and within minutes, a staff member arrived. But by then, the mirror was clean. No fog. No writing. Nothing. The staff member hesitated before speaking. "You're staying in 907, right?" "Yeah," Dylan replied. The man looked uneasy. "You know, you can switch rooms if you want. No charge." That was the first red flag. Too tired to argue, Dylan stayed put. But he left the lights on and slept with the television playing static for background noise. That's when he saw it. Around 4:46 a.m., the flickering light of the TV caught something in the reflection of the window, a tall, shadowy figure standing behind him. He turned immediately, but the room was empty. The curtains swayed slightly even though the windows were sealed shut. When he played back the recording on his phone the next day, he could hear it, a whisper, barely audible, but there. It said, "You sing for them. I died alone." Dylan checked out early that morning. He didn't tell the full story to his manager, only saying he was sick. But the experience haunted him. For months, he refused to stay in any hotel alone. He even started touring with a spiritual advisor, a woman who burned sage before every show. Years later, a backstage conversation leaked online, capturing Dylan admitting that room 907 changed him. That room had a soul. Or maybe something that had lost one. The hotel never publicly commented. But those in the know, other artists, managers, roadies, they all avoid the 9th floor now. Rumor has it, no matter how many times the hotel tries to close off room 907, it somehow ends up booked again. And the knocking? It always starts at 2:13 a.m. Even if you're famous, even if you're rich, you can't escape what waits in the dark. Long before Dylan Cross set foot in room 907, the hotel had built a reputation among locals, not for luxury, but for strangeness. Whispers of odd occurrences, vanished guests, and flickering lights had always floated around, dismissed by management as urban legends. But one person knew better. Dr. Marianne Wells, a retired university professor turned paranormal researcher, had spent years studying alleged haunted sites across the country. Her fascination with the supernatural started after a near-death experience in her 20s, and since then she documented dozens of cases, always with meticulous notes, historical research, and interviews. When she heard Dylan Cross's leaked backstage confession about room 907, her curiosity flared. She had heard of the hotel before. Its name had appeared in a 1974 police report about a missing couple. She dug deeper. Her investigation began at the local historical society, where she uncovered blueprints of the hotel dating back to its construction in 1921. Originally named the Briarwood Hotel, it was once a lavish estate turned boarding house during the Great Depression. But something changed in the 1950s. Records showed a string of unexplained guest disappearances, all linked to rooms on the 9th floor, particularly room 907. Most were dismissed as runaways or accidental misplacements of records, but police files told a different story. One in particular stood out. In 1962, a woman named Eleanor Park, a 32-year-old jazz singer, checked into room 907 and never checked out. Her luggage was found neatly packed, her car remained in the garage, but she was gone, vanished without a trace. A newspaper clipping from that year had a haunting headline: "Singer disappears after whispering about voices in the walls." Dr. Wells tracked down the retired bellhop who had worked the hotel that year. Now in his 80s, he was hesitant to talk, but eventually he agreed under the promise of anonymity. Mississippi Park was a quiet one, he recalled. Sweet voice? She stayed in 907 for a week. Told me the room was too cold even with the heat cranked up. Said she kept hearing humming in the closet. The bellhop claimed the night before her disappearance she looked terrified. Said someone stood at the foot of her bed humming one of her own songs back to her in a voice that wasn't hers. After Eleanor's case, the hotel reportedly closed room 907 for 12 years, quietly remodeling it and renumbering it to avoid suspicion. But the number kept reappearing: maintenance reports, staff schedules, even keys mysteriously printed with 907 instead of the new designation. It was as if the room refused to be forgotten. Dr. Wells' most compelling evidence came from a diary found in the hotel archives written by a former maid named Lucinda Hayes. The diary, dated between 1959 and 1963, detailed increasingly disturbing entries about the 9th floor. One passage read, "Mr. Harlan told me not to talk about the girl screaming in 907 again. But I heard her. She said, 'It won't let me leave. Every time I clean that room, I feel watched.'" Another entry, dated just a day after Eleanor's disappearance, said, "They told me she checked out, but her purse is still here, and that same cold is in the air, like winter has teeth." Dr. Wells compiled her findings into a private report, never published, but passed around among paranormal researchers and high-level hotel staff. In it, she theorized that room 907 acted as a psychic echo chamber, amplifying the trauma of anyone who entered. Those with emotionally charged energy, like musicians, actors, and artists, were especially vulnerable. To this day, room 907 remains active on the hotel's booking system, though few who work there will speak about it. Guests are sometimes upgraded mysteriously, placed in the suite without requesting it. And almost all reports, when collected anonymously, mention the same three things: knocking at 2:13 a.m., sudden cold air, a voice whispering, "I never left." Dr. Wells concluded her report with one chilling note: ghosts don't care about fame. They only care about who listens. She was at the peak of her career, awards lining her shelf, scripts pouring in, and directors begging for her name above the title. For Samantha Blake, horror was just another role to conquer. She had never believed in ghosts. Not really. Not until she stepped onto the set of The Warden's Daughter, a psychological thriller filmed inside a decommissioned asylum built in the early 1900s. The production had chosen the location for authenticity. The Greybridge State Hospital, abandoned for over 40 years, still held rusted wheelchairs, crumbling walls, and stained beds bolted to the floor. The setting was perfect. Too perfect. From the start, Samantha said she felt uneasy. Not fear, just a tightness in her chest, a sense that she was being watched. Like the walls had eyes, she later recalled in a whispered interview. And those eyes weren't impressed. During the first week of filming, nothing happened. The cast joked about ghosts and dared each other to go into the electroshock wing. Then, during a late-night shoot in the hospital's old children's ward, the first incident occurred. Samantha was filming a scene alone in front of a large mirror, rehearsing a monologue where her character questions her sanity. The camera rolled. She delivered the lines. Everything seemed fine. But when the footage was played back later, everyone noticed it, a girl in a hospital gown standing behind her in the mirror. The girl wasn't part of the production. No extras had been scheduled. No one on set that night was shorter than 5 feet. But the figure in the reflection was small, frail, and wearing something stained red. The director froze the frame and zoomed in. The face of the girl was blurred, as if in motion, but her eyes, completely black, looked straight into the lens. They tried to laugh it off. Lighting glitch, someone muttered. But Samantha wasn't convinced. She hadn't seen anyone behind her. And from that night on, strange things began happening. Her trailer, parked just outside the asylum, would unlock itself at random. On 2 occasions, she returned from makeup to find her clothes soaked in water, though the weather had been dry. She began waking up at 3:09 a.m. every night, heart pounding, always after dreaming of a girl staring from the corner of a room, saying nothing. One night, she was walking back to the main building with a production assistant. The hallway lights flickered, and in the brief darkness, the assistant screamed. He swore he saw a face, pale and grinning, pressed against the glass of the door behind Samantha. Samantha turned, but there was no one there. Still, she started carrying a small iron cross her grandmother had given her years ago. Just in case, she joked. But her smile didn't reach her eyes anymore. The worst moment came 3 weeks before filming wrapped. Samantha was filming a scene in a padded isolation room with only a cameraman and sound tech inside. As the door was closed and latched behind them, the crew outside heard shouting. Then screaming. They rushed in to find Samantha sobbing on the floor, clutching her stomach. The cameraman was pale, shaking, and refused to speak. The sound tech quit the next morning. Later, Samantha described what happened. Midway through the scene, she saw the girl again, this time crawling across the floor toward her. The girl whispered, "She won't stop until you say her name." When Samantha asked who, the girl only smiled and vanished into the wall. The camera footage? Corrupted. The audio? Static and what sounded like faint humming, almost like a lullaby. Filming continued, but Samantha was never the same. In interviews years later, she admitted the set took something from her. Something she never got back. Rumors spread in Hollywood that she'd refused to film in abandoned locations since, that she always requested a spiritual consultant on set, and that she kept a photo of the little girl, captured in that mirror, locked in a drawer, hidden from the world. Some say The Warden's Daughter was cursed. Others say the real horror wasn't what they filmed. It was who they disturbed. While the press buzzed over The Warden's Daughter, calling it Samantha Blake's grittiest role yet, what the public didn't see was the fear behind the scenes. Long after the final cut, the crew whispered about things that weren't caught on camera. Moments so disturbing, they refused to speak of them publicly. Until now, behind every film is a skeleton crew, gaffers, grips, PAs, sound techs who see and hear everything. And on this set, many of them were deeply unnerved. It started small. Tools went missing. Lights would short out without explanation even after multiple equipment checks. The on-set generator, brand new, would cut off every night at exactly 3:09 a.m., matching the time Samantha woke from her recurring nightmares. Then came the sounds. More than a dozen crew members reported hearing children laughing in the halls of the asylum. No children were allowed on set. A sound technician named Javier claimed he heard a voice whisper his name through the boom mic during a take, even though no one in the scene spoke it. When he played the raw audio back, there was silence followed by a faint breathing sound not matching any cast member or mic position. Still, the production forged on until the incident in Ward C. Ward C had been sealed for over 30 years. Covered in chains and padlocks, it wasn't in the original filming plan. But one night, the director, trying to get a spontaneous shot, ordered a grip team to cut the lock and explore. They entered with a Steadicam, 2 flashlights, and a monitor operator watching from outside. What the footage showed chilled everyone to the bone. The camera moved through dust and decay, revealing peeling paint and collapsed furniture. Suddenly, in the distance, a figure darted across the hallway, small, barefoot, and dressed in white. The team called out, thinking a prank was being played. No answer. The camera turned the corner and the feed cut to static. When they reviewed the footage, it ended mid-frame with the lens turning toward what looked like a doorway, and a face pressed against the crack. Pale, wide-eyed, grinning, the 2 crew members returned visibly shaken. One quit the next morning. The other was found a few hours later outside the asylum, curled into a ball and whispering over and over, "Don't say her name. Don't say her name. She's still listening." He never returned to work in film again. From that point on, the crew made a silent pact. Never shoot inside Ward C again. They told the director it was structurally unsafe and locked it back up. But the damage was done. From that night on, equipment failures increased. People started reporting nightmares of the same child figure. A production assistant began sleepwalking, found several times standing outside the locked doors of Ward C, whispering names no one recognized. The spiritual consultant, brought in after Samantha's trailer incident, claimed the building held residual trauma. A psychic echo so strong that filming in it was like yelling into a canyon and getting something else yelling back. On the final day of shooting, one of the grips, a skeptic who'd laughed through most of the events, decided to take a selfie in front of Ward C for fun. When he uploaded the photo later that night, he found something chilling, a hand pressed against the inside of the door, visible in the corner of the frame. The fingers were long, skeletal, and left a dark smear across the old glass. That photo was quickly deleted. The grip hasn't spoken about it since. After production wrapped, several crew members reported post-film hauntings, phantom knocks at home, sleep paralysis, strange smells, and in one case, a photo of a young girl appearing in a crew member's wallet where his son's baby picture used to be. He never took the photo. No one recognized the girl. The studio, worried about reputation and investor confidence, signed off on NDAs. The public never heard about Ward C or the girl. But among insiders, The Warden's Daughter became known as the film that found something real. The set was torn down. The asylum was resealed. But sometimes, just sometimes, local kids claim they hear humming coming from behind the boarded windows. A lullaby. Off-key. Faint. And always around 3:09 a.m. He made millions laugh. Night after night, his voice echoed through living rooms across America. With a signature grin and sharp wit, Miles Harrington, the beloved late-night talk show host, was the picture of charisma. But fame has its shadows, and Miles would soon learn that some visitors don't knock before they enter. It began subtly. Miles had just wrapped a successful season, ratings were higher than ever, and his network had greenlit another 2 years. To unwind, he spent a few weeks at his countryside estate, an old colonial home he'd bought years earlier for privacy and peace. At first, it was just noise. Footsteps in the upstairs hallway while he was in the kitchen. A door creaking open at night even though he'd locked it. His housekeeper, Marta, swore she saw someone walk past the guest room one morning, a tall man in a dark suit. But when she called out, no one answered. Miles brushed it off. Old houses make old sounds, he joked. That was until the dreams started. He began waking at 2:47 a.m. each night, heart racing. In his dreams, a man with a blurred face would sit at the foot of his bed and whisper, "You've talked to millions. Now listen to me." Each night, the dream grew clearer. The man's face became more visible, sunken cheeks, pale skin, and eyes that didn't blink. His voice was always calm. But Miles always woke in a cold sweat, the sheets damp, his hands trembling. He started recording himself as he slept. On the 5th night, he caught something. At exactly 2:47 a.m., the audio picks up a low knock on the bedroom door, 4 slow taps. Then silence. Then a breathy voice whispers, "You forgot me." Miles was shaken. He reviewed the footage with his producer, who was speechless. "It's probably a prank," he said, but he didn't sound convinced. The next night, Miles didn't sleep. He stayed up watching the door, lights on, a glass of bourbon in hand. At 2:47 a.m., the room grew noticeably colder. The air turned heavy and the lights dimmed, though there was no power fluctuation in the house. Then the doorknob turned. Slowly. No one was on the other side. But on the mirror facing the door, words had appeared, foggy and faint. "You said you'd tell my story." That was when it clicked. Years earlier, Miles had done a Halloween special about real ghost stories, featuring call-ins from viewers. One woman had called in sobbing, speaking of her brother who had died mysteriously after seeing a visitor in the woods. She begged for help, but the show had cut to commercial, brushing it off as a hoax. Miles had laughed. The audience had laughed. He had forgotten her name. But the guilt, that moment of dismissal, flooded back. Desperate, he contacted Marta, his housekeeper, and asked her to bring a priest. But the priest wouldn't enter the estate. He stood at the gate and said, "Only whatever's inside isn't asking for prayer. It's asking to be seen." Miles returned to the house alone that night. And that was the last time he slept in that bedroom. What happened next was never officially confirmed, but according to sources close to the staff, Miles left the estate 2 days later and checked into a psychiatric retreat. He claimed a man followed him from room to room, repeating the same sentence, "Tell my story." The estate was sold shortly after. The new owners reported nothing out of the ordinary except for a mirror in the master bedroom that always fogged up around 2:47 a.m. even in summer. Once, the husband saw words written in the condensation, "You said you'd listen." Miles never returned to late-night television. In a rare interview a year later, he was asked about his sudden retirement. His response was short but chilling. "When the dead ask to be remembered, you listen. Because if you don't, they find ways to remind you. When celebrities speak, people listen. But when they speak about the paranormal, reactions aren't always supportive, especially when the tales involve ghosts, haunted sets, or things that whisper in the dark." As the stories of Dylan Cross, Samantha Blake, and Miles Harrington began to surface, some leaked, others hinted at through interviews or cryptic remarks, the public was divided. For Dylan Cross, his backstage confession about the haunted room 907 spread like wildfire. At first, fans thought it was just a dramatic tale told for publicity. But when journalists dug deeper and unearthed historical documents, police reports, and Dr. Marianne Wells' research, things changed. Podcasts dissected the timeline. Reddit sleuths compared tour schedules with nights Dylan had reportedly broken down on stage. And one blurry photo taken by a fan during a meet-and-greet showed Dylan standing alone, but with a dark shape behind him in the reflection of the lobby's mirror. The hotel where it all occurred suddenly became a viral sensation. Paranormal influencers checked in, documenting their experiences, most notably one who live-streamed knocking sounds at 2:13 a.m. and passed out moments later after claiming "Someone's breathing in my ear." The video has over 3 million views. Then came Samantha Blake. After her film The Warden's Daughter premiered, fans started noticing the odd visual glitches in several scenes, flashes of motion in the background, flickers of what looked like a child's face. Even a brief moment where a crew member swore the girl in the hospital gown appeared in a window reflection, even though no such scene was written or filmed. Forums erupted. Was it viral marketing? A hidden character? Or something far more sinister? A behind-the-scenes documentary that aired months later had to be pulled after multiple complaints from viewers who said the sound gave them migraines, nosebleeds, or, oddest of all, the same recurring dream of humming behind a locked door. Even skeptics began to ask, could the set really have left a psychic imprint? Was it possible that the stories were real? Then Miles Harrington's final late-night interview aired. Wearing a suit darker than usual, his tone more somber, he avoided jokes. When asked about his sudden retirement, he paused for a long time, then simply said, "I used to laugh at ghost stories. Now I just try not to hear them." The clip went viral. The comment section exploded. Some mocked him. Others shared their own paranormal experiences. One commenter posted, "He looked off camera like someone was watching. Rewatch at 8:14, you can see his eyes flick left like he saw someone we didn't." Media outlets couldn't get enough. Overnight, celebrity hauntings became a trending topic. TikTokers reenacted scenes from the ghost stories. YouTubers created video essays. Even psychologists weighed in, speculating on fame-induced stress hallucinations. But among the noise, something shifted. People started believing. Not everyone, but enough. Enough to turn whispers into warnings. Hotels began reviewing their records. Studio sets brought in spiritual consultants. Paranormal podcasts surged to the top of streaming charts. And celebrities who had once laughed at ghost stories now shared their own, cautiously, often anonymously. Some even speculated whether fame itself made people more vulnerable to the supernatural. as if the energy of adoration, obsession, and scrutiny left celebrities more visible to things on the other side. One viral theory claimed ghosts don't haunt places. They haunt stories. And the more people hear your name, the more the dead remember you. Even fans reported strange experiences, seeing shadows and photos of their favorite stars, hearing voices after watching interviews, and some even dreaming of the same child in a hospital gown. Fear became fashionable. But beneath the trends and hashtags, one truth echoed louder than the rest. Fame may bring light, but it also casts deep shadows. And in those shadows, something waits. Every ghost story ends the same way, with the question, did it really happen? In the case of Beyond the Spotlight, that question haunts more than just the audience. It lingers in studio backlots, inside hotel lobbies, in the quiet corners of country estates. The stories of Dylan Cross, Samantha Blake, and Miles Harrington were never meant to be told. At least not like this. But they were told. And now they live on. Not just in whispers, but in clicks, clips, theories, and fear. Hollywood has always walked the line between illusion and reality. It's an industry built on make-believe, where people wear faces that aren't theirs and speak words written by strangers. But when the veil lifts, when the supernatural bleeds into the spotlight, the audience sees something terrifying. Not everything is acting. Dylan never returned to that hotel. Yet rumors swirl that he privately pays for room 907 to remain sealed, its key removed from the front desk. Still, guests report hearing music at night. The same melody he claimed the ghost played. A song that has no record of existing. Samantha left horror films behind. Her roles grew quieter, safer. She no longer shoots on location. And while she has never publicly confirmed what happened on the set of The Warden's Daughter, she now supports foundations for abandoned mental health facilities. One reporter claimed her donation letter read, "Let them rest in peace." And Miles? He vanished into a private world. No interviews, no cameos. But once, on a rainy October evening, a fan claimed to spot him on a park bench, staring at a mirror he held in his lap. When she asked him for a photo, he looked up and said, "Not tonight. He's here." True or not, these stories persist. And that persistence, how they refuse to die, is what gives them power. Because in the end, ghost stories aren't about ghosts. They're about reminders. Reminders that the past is never truly gone. Reminders that silence doesn't mean absence. And perhaps, most chilling of all, reminders that the dead still want to be heard. In a world obsessed with fame, attention, and storytelling, there may be no better way to live on than to become a story yourself. And for the celebrities who dared to speak their truth, who revealed the things that went bump in their million-dollar nights, they learned one final lesson. The scariest part of a ghost story isn't that it might be fake. It's that it might be real.